morning, everybody. Hi. All right. I think we are ready to get going. See, first, we do have one housekeeping item that I don't think was on the original agenda, and it's a conversation in regards to our meeting in November, which is currently scheduled for the morning of November 16th. Just going to let everybody know, Sonia's going to send off like a doodle or something that where y'all can pick some different options, but we need to switch from that November meeting, and we'll have everybody kind of pick a different date. She's got in the chat, she put the dates that are possibilities that we could move it to. Unfortunately, I have a conflict that morning, and it has to do with our current Chief Information Technology Officer, Ash Mahajan, has given notice, and the finalist interviews for our new candidate are that morning, and I need to be present for that. So just as that comes out, we'll make sure that everybody follows up with that. This evening, we do have the board presentation to the presentation to the board for the external monitoring report. And I believe I'm thanking Kelly and Neva for this evening. Are we still on track?
Yes, we are still on track. Yes.
Megan.
And I just have a quick question. Are we just presenting the same information we did in spring to the board?
We're presenting the external monitoring report and the findings from that.
Oh, okay.
Neva, if you can come just to maybe 5 minutes early, I can go ahead also and talk through with you on that.
Okay, I'll be there a little early.
Okay. And then Kelly, are you still good to go for this evening?
I am, but was planning on being remote, if that's all right.
Sonia's
Is it still being?
So Megan and Neva were planning to be there for the meeting.
Is it Megan?
Well, I received the invitation, but I thought it was Kelly. So if Kelly, if you can't make it in person, I can. That's fine. I think there was just a little confusion, but you know, I can be there if you cannot attend.
And I can be there in person as well.
Okay.
I'll be there in person.
Yeah, unfortunately, in person is just going to be tough tonight. The kiddos got basketball. I apologize. I thought I could do it remotely when I volunteered.
No, okay. So then if we could swap up, Megan, if you can come, and Neva, you can come and be in person. We have you early on in the agenda. You're the first thing right after the board kind of does their opening and public comment. And so I really believe we're going to have you out of there no later. I honestly believe we'll have you out of there no later than 7:30.
That'd be great. So
Okay, perfect. I'm there for however long you need me. I'll be there probably about 6:30 as well.
So you don't need to get there that early.
What time do you think?
The meeting doesn't even start till 7.
Oh,
so
okay.
Get there at 7. That would be great, Neva. And then we could go through that. And Megan, if you might be able to get there a little early, the three of us could sit down and so that you guys have the report and you can figure out maybe the couple areas that you wanted to talk about on the findings, as well as we talked about, we wanted to talk about the process that you went through this year, since it was different than in prior reports.
Yeah, I can be there by 7. That's not a problem.
Perfect. That's great.
Where do we go? Is it just like we just go into that main building, and then I'm assuming there'll be signs or something?
Yeah, if you go in the front door, they'll push you through, and Aspen is right there, but I'll be waiting for you guys out in the hallway right there as you come through that front door. So to make sure that there's no confusion.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Well, thanks, ladies, for covering for me. Apologies. Just wasn't thinking when I volunteered. So thank you.
Nope, that's all good. That's good. Okay. And then it looks like we have John Paul on, and he's here. And so two things. One, so we're going to turn it over, and John Paul's going to do the presentation from the external audit firm. So the same annual and the reports and the requirements, that you guys have. And so he'll do that. While he is doing that presentation, I just want to let you know I am going to step away for a couple minutes. We're more multitasking today. We actually have a interviewee for the director of accounting position that I've got to go grab from the front, get it over to the team, and then come back. So hold any questions that you might have for me until the very end, and I promise I'll get back in and we'll get those answered. But otherwise, John Paul, I think we're ready to go.
All right, thank you, Susie. And if you give me just am I able to have access to share my screen, and I'll share
Yes.
It's currently saying that I'm disabled from that access.
Oh. Let's see, I can, do you want me to go ahead and share it on my end? You should be able to.
Can you add him as a co-host?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that he can.
Okay, let me get to that. Yeah, it won't let me. So our Adams 12 person is not on. Let me go ahead and I can share it.
Okay.
I'm not sure why it's not letting you. I apologize. Let me download it so that. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so if you go to the next slide, yeah, perfect. If you've been on the Finance and Audit Committee in previous years, you're probably familiar with this presentation, and it's our required annual communication at the beginning of the audit process to communicate our responsibilities as the auditors, give a little bit of kind of update of what we're expecting to look at this year, any kind of changes, and then really provide an opportunity that if there's any questions for us or items that would make sense for the Finance and Audit Committee to discuss, to have those conversations now or kind of get those scheduled. So again, we really want to make sure that if there are any concerns, questions, anything that should be discussed, also kind of introduce myself. So my name is John Paul Le Chevalier. Again, been working with the district on the audit for a number of years now. So if you do have anything that you'd prefer to discuss kind of outside of this meeting, please feel free to reach out and we can get something scheduled to discuss. So if we go to the next slide. All right, so the scope of the audit, again, is going to be similar to previous years. There's really two main portions of the annual audit. The first is the financial statement audit, which is going to be over the annual comprehensive financial report. So the full document that's issued that contains all of the financial information. That's really going to be the primary focus of most of our audit procedures. And then along with that is the single audit, which is the audit over federal awards. And so based on the initial federal award information that we've received from the district, we do anticipate having 3 programs that we'll be testing this year, which is typically it's been between 1 and 2 in most years, but with some of the additional COVID relief funding that continues to come in, we are at 3 programs this year that we're looking at. So the Child Nutrition Cluster, which is a standard program that we would be reviewing on a regular basis. And then the ESSER funding, while we, I believe, looked at that last year, that is listed by the federal government as a higher risk program since it relates to COVID relief funding. And so that's going to be tested basically every year that the district has a significant dollar amount recorded for it. And then there's also the emergency connectivity funding, which is the first time that this has been received by the district. First time that this has been received by the district. And so this is for some additional IT equipment that the district has purchased. And so that'll be, again, a new award that we'll be looking at this year. If we can move to the next slide. So the next, this slide and the next slide really just outlines our responsibilities as auditors. It's kind of the legal language here of what we're looking at, but the main communication is that really as the auditors, we are responsible for performing audit procedures to get us to the place where we can, in our opinion, issue our audit report to say that based on kind of reasonable assurance, so not absolute assurance, meaning we're not looking at every single transaction from start to finish, but we are looking at internal controls, a sample of procedures, other kind of analytical procedures that we're performing, reasonable assurance, kind of reached through those audit procedures, and then in all material respects. So basically, if something is significant enough that it would alter someone's view of the financial statements from a transaction not being included or not being included correctly, those are the things that we're looking for and what our audit report is issuing over. So that's kind of the real high level overview. And then on the single audit, we are looking, the requirements are much different. It's pretty black and white in terms of this is what the federal government is telling us, how they want this program audited. We're following those procedures. And if we have any issues or exceptions as part of the findings, there's no concept of materiality. It just is reported if that's something that we are testing. So if you go to the next slide, the other last item on here is that our responsibility is to review and double check the information included within the financial statements. So the financial statements are still the responsibility of the district, and making sure that there's the internal controls and processes and procedures necessary to be able to put those together accurately. I will say, as we kind of move through here, we are going to be assisting this year with preparing and drafting the financial statements. But while we are going to be assisting with taking the information that the district has and putting it together within the financial statements, that doesn't change the district's responsibility still overall for the financial statements. So the district still needs to make sure that the financial statements are accurately presented, even if we are assisting with kind of putting that information together. We can go to the next slide. So kind of some of the significant updates in terms of what we're seeing at the district. We continue to see the ESSER funding being a significant inflow of federal grant funding that the district is receiving. And then also did want to mention, which the committee's probably aware of, but the two primary contacts that have been at the district for the audit over the last couple of years, both left the district within the last few months. And so that is causing or anticipated to cause a little bit of a shifting back of the timeline. And then also we will be assisting with the financial statement preparation, which is something that the district has historically done. But just with that turnover, we are anticipating or engaged at this point to prepare the financial statements. We can go to the next slide. Couple of other items for 2022 or fiscal year 2022. Just pointing out, since I know it's one of the only times that the district probably sees the para information on your financial statements, you'll see that last year, the net pension liability that's presented relating to para, again, that the district doesn't have control over, but does get reported on your financial statements, did move from 765 million liability to a little over 500 million liability for fiscal year 22. There's also the related deferred outflows and inflows that change, but in this case, the change in the liability is pretty similar to what the actual impact is going to be. So it's about 180 million improvement, so a decrease in the overall liability from the previous year. So the financial statements of the district on this full accrual or long-term view will look stronger by about 180 million compared to last year, solely for the changes relating to para. The net OPEB liability is also related to para, and that did have a slight decrease. So went from 28 million in fiscal year 21 down to 24 million. Obviously, nowhere near as significant as the net pension liability, but did want to bring that up. There is also the implementation of GASB 87 relating to leases. And what this is going to do on the financial statements is take some of the previously presented operating leases, which would have just been shown as expenditures as incurred. So whenever the payment comes due for that, that payment would be made, showed as an expenditure. After implementation of GASB 87, the liability over the term of that lease will be presented on the financial statement. So rather than just showing the payments as they become due, you'll actually show the liability for the entire term of that lease, along with the corresponding asset that the district would be able to use. So it really, on the balance sheet, is going to be increasing both your assets and your liabilities by a similar amount, at least to start. But did want to point that out, since that is something that will be a change from previous years and is something that really every school district and government in Colorado and the United States is required to be implementing GASB 87 this year. So that'll be a change that kind of everyone's going through. Something to point out is that next year, similar to GASB 87 with leases, will also be the subscription-based information technology arrangements. This is basically software. So software subscriptions will be going through the same type of view of putting them on as assets and liabilities. So far, we've seen with GASB 87 with leases that there's a handful that the district will have that will be presented this way. But there may be, and it's only kind of the early stages, as the software agreements will be next year, but seeing that that might be quite a bit more significant than leases in terms of either the dollar amount or really the number of items that need to be included. So just wanted to point those out, since GASB 87 is a pretty significant change for this year. And then the subscription-based information technology arrangements will be pretty significant for next year. As I kind of alluded to towards the beginning of the presentation, we do have a slight shifting back of the timeline from what we had initially been looking at. So previously, we were looking to try and have everything wrapped up in November. We have pushed that back to December with the turnover at the district, and just allowing for more time to get everything organized for us to start the audit, which will be starting in the next couple of weeks here, and then getting everything wrapped up. It, again, especially the first year, drafting the financial statements does take quite a bit more time to get all of that set up and organized. So we are shooting for that December 2022 completion and issuance of the audited financial statements. And then if you go to the next slide, really similar to previous years, again, the big thing that we're looking for is making sure that in terms of having a successful audit, would be communication with the district. So if there's any issues that come up, any delays, again, with the turnover in the finance department, that we're having that communication. If we have any issues with items that we're looking at or concerns, we will be communicating that with the district, as soon as we come to some of those conclusions, and then again, looking to have everything go smoothly once we kind of push back the timing and get everything that we need together for the financials. So I think it will require some more coordination this year. It was pretty routine for the previous, individuals within the finance department for the district. So it'll be a little bit more coordination required this year. But we think that with the current plan, we should be able to execute on that and have everything completed by that December timeframe. So with that, that concludes everything that I have. Any questions, discussion items, anything that the committee wants to discuss? Maybe still early, everyone needing coffee. All right, well, I don't know if Susie's back yet, but that's all that I have. So if there's no questions, really appreciate everyone's time this morning. And again, please feel free if there's anything that comes up later, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to discuss any, again, questions, comments, concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll give Susie just a few minutes to come back. But I'll put out the, we're going to be talking about the 2.4 monitoring report. So I'll just put the link out there for it so you can start looking over it while we wait for her. And she should be right back. And you can let me know too in the notes, because I've had a couple of people do that. I've been commenting about our meeting in November. If you want to do the 9th or the 14th, or can do both. So far, I've got 2 people that can do the 9th, and 2 people that can do, one that can do the 14th and one that can do the 9th or the 14th. So if you want to put that in the notes, you certainly can. Thanks.
Can you get my, there. All right. Here we go. Let me look. 2.4 monitoring report. Let me see if I can share my screen. Well, Sonia, I can't share my screen either.
I'll share it. I've asked him to fix it, but he hasn't responded.
Okay.
So let me
You
share.
guys all, this is, you guys all have the link for
There we go.
2.4. Oh, there we go. Okay, this is the monitoring report, and you'll notice it goes through the end of June 2022. So this is last year's year-ending monitoring report. And one, I will go out and say, just start, this has been already presented to the board. It is, there are no areas that are not in compliance. Everything on the report is in compliance. There's also nothing of major concern. The one thing that I had pointed out previously and is not called out specifically in the written document, but in the financials, is that we are ending the year with a loss on investments. And I'd mentioned that at our previous meeting that was going to be coming up. And that is just due to, one, the timing and the close. It is not a true cash loss, but it is a paper loss. And so that just something that, so that everybody is aware. And that'll also be something that I make sure that as our investment advisors, when they come back and meet with you guys and present to you, that's something that they're always giving you that update as to where we're at on those investment earnings, and making sure that we have that information. The other thing is on this monitoring report, it is done on financials that are not audited. They're not finished and audited, as you know, because you just went through the update with John Paul. So this is where we are at as of the time and what the financials are at. So there are going to be things that will change between this report and our final financials. Journal entries will be done. Adjustments will be made as regards to things like compensated absences, meaning the time that we still have available for folks in their temp and vacation time. Those entries will be done if there is an increase in cost or decrease in cost associated with what people have taken versus what's still outstanding. That's kind of some of the salaries and benefits journal entries are some of the biggest ones that will adjust between a final audit and the timing of the financials for this one. Neva, it looks like you've got your hand up. What can I help
do.
with?
I just have a quick question. Is that what we're going to be reporting on today? Is the findings for the investments that you just talked about? Is that we're going to present that tonight?
No, you're not having to present anything tonight on the investments. The
Okay.
external monitoring report is just talking about your reviews of our previous different reports. But
Oh,
no, you don't have to know about this specifically on 2.4 tonight. No.
okay, thank you.
When we presented this to the board, there were no questions from them in regards to this, and let them know the same thing, that these are not final audited financials. And so we will be making adjustments throughout between now and our final audit. Other than that, are there any other questions in regards to our 2.4 report? Okay, let's move on. Sonia, can you bring up the bylaws so that we can talk through that? Sonia? Oh, okay, perfect. And Sonia, is this in edit mode so that they can see the changes that we've made?
Yes.
Perfect. Can you go down to the first section? So everyone, by the way, these are our bylaws. They were originally completed and adopted in 2017. And as time has passed, we went through and we've looked at this and we needed to make some updates because we're not necessarily doing everything that we'd originally intended, and we've added things that were required for us to do. So on the page that's showing on the screen right now, it was very on the FAC's primary financial planning duties. It had been extremely heavy on a budget. And quite honestly, that is not what this board committee is doing. Instead, this board committee is more actuals, not budget. We do review the annual budget with you, but this group spends way more time on audit, external monitoring, and reviewing those monitoring reports, talking with staff to make sure that the staff's timing and the work that we're doing when we're completing our internal monitoring reports is in compliance, and the things that we're telling the board in our reports have been checked, reviewed, in different ways for some accuracy. And so did notice that we needed to adjust a lot of these budget items and refocus them into more things like the internal financial control systems by meeting with staff. Those are the questions you're asking when you're talking with all of us about what's going on, is you're questioning how we're doing our work and our review for our monitoring reports, so that you're checking our internal controls. You're meeting with the investment advisors. They come in and they talk to you about what's been going on as far as our investments go, both our regular general fund and district dollars, as well as our bond dollars for capital work. And so that's something that was important because if you have any questions or concerns on how we're handling investments, this is the group that would, a community group that would ask those questions. You work with the independent auditors to understand our required financial reporting. So those are the changes that we've made in C, D, and E. In section 6, we did add in the conversations that you have with our financial advisors. And it hasn't been, the financial advisors haven't been very active here more recently. But if we go back and remember, when we did the bond and we did the second issuance, it's the Finance and Audit Committee that works also with our financial advisors to determine our underwriter pool, and sitting down, and when the underwriters come and do those interviews, it's with this community committee. And so we needed to also make sure that we had that included. What I will just give you a heads up, the district did just recently go through the RFP process for financial advisors. We did have two, we have to do that every 5 years. It's so that we're in compliance with those requirements. We had 2 responses, and based off of the feedback on those responses, we will be sticking with Hilltop Securities, our current group, and that'll be, we'll finalize that RFP process, here shortly on that one. But as we're doing that, we also will look and hold a similar process if the board does decide to put a bond question on the ballot in November, in 2023, 2024, at any point in November. This will be the group that will also help decide, again, our underwriting pool. And there'll be a lot of conversations. This will also be a group that will have conversations with the financial advisors on debt and the debt structure and how we will handle all of that. You will notice on this, there's a lot of notes, and then sometimes on the sides, I actually added some comments just so that we could explain the why, but for the most part, down the side is just the changing in the format. If we keep going down, we took out an entire section in regards to, we did not go with a structure of having a chairperson and vice chairperson. What we have done is the whole group has gotten together and done the same work, and kind of as a whole team and committee, we run these meetings. And so we needed to take that component out so that because we as a group along the way have just decided as a small committee, not as easy to get folks to step up in regards to chairperson and vice chairperson. And then going through changing that. Originally, we also had in section 8 that the board would appoint new members on or before July 1 so that we could start the new year. But in reality, that meeting when the board comes back is in September. So that's more of a kind of a housekeeping cleanup change because the board doesn't meet and have that conversation. And the board meets in September and actually approves for all 3 board committees, the members for the Finance and Audit Committee, the District Accountability Committee, and the Long Range Planning and Advisory Committee. Doesn't mean that throughout the year we can't have a conversation with the board. If we can get more folks that are interested in joining the committee, we can ask for those to be approved by the board during the year, but the big kind of main approval is that September meeting. And then I think we've got a couple in this meeting section where our Phil Spare, the district's general counsel, made a couple adjustments, and again, so that we're in compliance with meeting laws, and that's it. Any questions about the changes that we've proposed to the bylaws?
No, Susie, these all make sense to me. They align everything perfectly.
Looks good to me. Are we going to get a copy of the bylaws once the changes are finalized?
You will. That'll be in the same, it'll be in that Google folder.
Oh, the Google Drive? Okay,
It
perfect.
will be in the Google Drive. But based off of this, is there we need to have a vote, because as this committee, you got to vote on your bylaws. So in the chat, everyone that accepts these bylaw changes, please say yes.
Yes, I motion to approve the bylaws.
Okay. And for anyone that is concerned that these are not the right changes, please also, or post in the chat, no. It's the easiest way for me to make this work. Okay. Looks like we have approved our changes in the bylaws. So we will get that out to everybody. Again, it'll be in the Google, but we will send that out so that everybody is aware of those changes that we made, and you will have that. So Sonia, we're zipping through this meeting super fast today.
Yes, and so we don't have Phil coming till about 9:20, so we could do the work on the FAC report for the presentation today, if you'd like to do that first.
We can't, yeah, we can
Okay,
do that. And then
yeah.
I think by the time Phil's done doing his, so I will let you guys know, this is the superintendent's contract. This is a conversation that we have every year with, well, we're now having every year with, we have with Phil. Previously it had been others in the district, and we just believe that since the general counsel is going to be our best resource for you. Do we have the Sonia, is the report, the Google sheet ready to go? And does everybody have a link to where the working document is?
Yes, and I just put it in the chat as well.
Okay, perfect. We won't put, and if we're gonna do this, since we're working, do we have IT on that can turn off the YouTube while we're doing our regular work, since that's not to be streamed?
Let me go see if I can. I have not, the IT person hasn't responded to anything. I'm going to go over and see if I can.
Yep, I can pause the stream. They just did
Okay.
the
Oh,
chat.
you can. Okay, thank you.
Perfect.